I grew up in a family where all the attention was focused on Madison, my older sister. If she was the shining sun, then I was just a faint shadow, drifting at the edge of the light. I can't remember the last time my parents truly looked at me with pride, but I remember very clearly the moments they cherished Madison, like a precious gem. As a child, I tried so hard to be seen. I participated in every school competition, from debate to science fairs, hoping that one day my parents would look at me the way they looked at Madison. But no matter how much I tried, the result was always the same. I still remember one evening when I was 12. It was the night of the school's science fair awards. I had spent weeks building a smart eco-house model, a project that had cost me many sleepless nights to complete. When they called my name for first place, I could hardly believe my ears. In my hands were a certificate and a gleaming medal, and my heart was filled with hope. When I got home, Madison was sitting on the sofa, beaming as she talked about the dance routine she had just performed at her school's dress rehearsal. Everyone clapped so loudly, Mom. The teacher even said I have a natural talent, Madison said excitedly, her golden hair catching the soft glow of the table lamp beside her. I waited. I waited for the moment Mom would turn to me, see the medal in my hands, and praise me. But instead, she simply ruffled Madison's hair and said proudly, "You really have an artistic gift, sweetheart." I stood there, gripping my certificate tightly, feeling a suffocating weight in my chest. When I finally spoke up, "Mom, I won first place at the science fair today." She barely glanced at the medal before giving me a small smile. "That's nice, honey. Was the competition hard?" I fell silent. Dad sat in his armchair, eyes still glued to his newspaper, not even bothering to look up. No one asked about my project. No one wanted to know how much effort I had put into it. They just continued basking in Madison's glow. That night, I lay in bed, the cold medal in my hand, tears rolling down my cheeks. I couldn't understand why I was never enough. Years passed, and I learned to accept my place in the family. I stopped trying to get their attention and instead threw myself into academics. If I couldn't be loved, at least I could be the best in my field. And then I met Nathan. Nathan was the first person who made me feel like I truly existed. He didn't just listen, he remembered the smallest details about me, the things my parents had never cared about. Nathan knew I liked drinking chamomile tea at night, knew I loved capturing candid moments with my camera, knew I had a notebook where I wrote down my strange dreams. We started dating when I was 20. Being with Nathan felt like stepping out of Madison's shadow. For the first time in my life, I was loved without having to prove my worth. But of course, Madison wouldn't let that be. I still remember the night Nathan first came over for dinner with my family. Mom brought out her best dinnerware, and Dad poured drinks as if we were hosting an important event. But I quickly realized that the dinner wasn't about me. It was about Madison. She sat across from me, her blue eyes sparkling as she looked at Nathan. She smiled, tilting her head, her long hair shining under the chandelier. I saw the way she looked at him. The look I knew better than anyone else. "Nathan, what do you do for a living?" Madison asked, her voice unusually sweet. Nathan smiled. "I'm an assistant designer at an architecture firm." "Wow, that's so interesting. I always thought people in that field were incredibly creative." Madison giggled, her slender fingers brushing the rim of her glass. I stiffened. I knew exactly what Madison was doing. I had seen it too many times before. When she wanted something, she would get it. Throughout dinner, Madison kept finding ways to draw Nathan's attention. I tried to ignore it, telling myself that Nathan loved me, that he wouldn't be affected. But deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. After dinner, I went into the kitchen to clean up, trying to shake off the uncomfortable feeling. Then I heard Madison giggling. When I turned around, I saw her standing next to Nathan, her hand lightly resting on his arm. My heart sank. "Madison, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice low enough that only she could hear. Madison shrugged, her lips curving into an innocent smile. "Relax, Lucy. We're just talking." But I knew it wasn't just talking. The next day, Nathan started texting me less, then even less. Our meetings became awkward, filled with unexplained silences. And then, on a late afternoon, as I stood in my small apartment, my heart pounding, I heard the words I had been dreading for weeks. "Lucy, I'm sorry." Nathan's voice grew quieter. "It's Madison. I think I have feelings for her." I held my breath, my entire body frozen. "You're choosing her?" I asked, my voice breaking. Nathan didn't answer right away. And that silence said everything. I looked at him one last time, then turned away. I didn't cry, not then. I slammed the door behind me and stood still in my tiny apartment. The silence was so deep I could hear my own heavy breathing. A hollow emptiness grew in my chest, as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. Nathan was gone. Madison had won. I looked around. The worn-out chair, the stack of books piled on the table, the photo I had taken of the sunset at the beach last year. Everything seemed the same, but I knew that in just a few short minutes, my world had changed forever. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I wasn't even sure what I was expecting. A message from Nathan? An apology from Madison? Or just some sign that I still mattered? But there was nothing. Just a blank screen reflecting my stunned face back at me. That night, I drove home, not knowing why. Maybe I just wanted to feel some warmth, even if it was an illusion. But when I walked through the door, my mother was standing there, arms crossed, her face void of any sympathy. "Lucy, you can't keep blowing things out of proportion like this," she sighed. "Nathan made his choice. You need to learn to accept it." I clenched my fists, trying to keep the tremble out of my voice. Accept it? Accept that she took the person I loved? Accept that once again I was left behind? My mother simply shook her head. "Madison didn't take anyone. If Nathan really loved you, he wouldn't have changed his mind." My chest tightened. I looked over at my father, hoping, just maybe, he would say something, anything. But as usual, he just turned the page of his newspaper, not even bothering to look up. I let out a bitter laugh. "I see. Madison has always been the important one, hasn't she?" No one answered. That night, I packed my things in silence. I didn't need much, just a suitcase of clothes, a few books, and the old camera I had bought from a thrift store back in high school. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm leaving. Don't call." And as I stepped out the door, I didn't look back. I moved into a small apartment in the city, a place where no one knew who I was, where I could start over without Madison's shadow looming over me. I found a job as a waitress at a small diner. The place was always busy, the clatter of dishes, the hum of conversations, the constant rhythm of orders being called out. Strangely, I liked it. Here, I wasn't Madison's forgotten little sister. I was just Lucy, the girl who made the best coffee in the place. At night, I enrolled in business courses at a community college. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I needed knowledge to make sure I would never have to rely on anyone again. The first few months were hard. I was exhausted from long shifts, late-night classes, and eating instant noodles alone in my tiny apartment. But I also felt myself changing. I learned to take care of myself, to stand on my own without needing my family's approval. And then I found photography. One late night after work, I sat by my window, watching the street lights reflect off the rain-soaked pavement. I picked up my camera and snapped a picture. I didn't know why I did it, but when I looked at the photo on the screen, I felt something. A little peace. A little hope. I started taking more pictures. The forgotten corners of the city, the homeless bundled up on sidewalks, the abandoned bicycles left to rust. I didn't have expensive equipment, but I had an eye for what others overlooked. One day, while I was taking photos in the park, a man approached me. He wore a slightly rumpled suit, his tie loosened, dark hair a little unkempt. "Are you a photographer?" he asked. I chuckled. "I just take pictures for fun." He looked at the image on my camera screen. "You have a unique eye." "I'm Daniel. creative director for an art magazine. I'm looking for a new photographer for a piece on urban life. My eyes widened. You want to hire me? Daniel nodded. I'd like to see more of your photos first, but yes. I think you have potential. I could hardly believe my ears. I was so used to being overlooked, dismissed, but this time, someone actually saw me. That night, I sat alone in my small apartment, looking through the photos I had taken over the past few months. I remembered how it felt to hold that medal when I was 12, the feeling of hope, only to have it crushed by my family's indifference. But this time was different. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had found my own light, and I wouldn't let anyone dim it. The next day, I sent Daniel my portfolio. 3 days later, I received a response. Amazing, when can you start? I smiled. For the first time in my life, I knew I was on the right path. I never thought I would hear about Madison again, but then one day, Lydia called me. Lydia was my cousin, the only person in the family who had never treated me like Madison's shadow. We didn't talk often, but whenever we did, she always brought me pieces of news from the world I had left behind. Lucy, do you have a moment? Lydia's voice came through the phone, hesitant. I was editing a new set of photos for the magazine, but I immediately stopped. What is it? Lydia sighed. It's about Madison. And Nathan. I tensed, my fingers tightening around my phone. Even after all these years, that name still had the power to pull me back into the past. I don't care, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I think you might, Lydia said cautiously. Their marriage is falling apart. Nathan hates his job, and Madison is spending money like it grows on trees. They're drowning in debt, but still trying to keep up appearances. I let out a small laugh, not out of satisfaction, but because of the irony. So, I asked. Lydia was silent for a moment before she continued. You know, everyone in the family still talks about Madison like she's the greatest person in the world. But I'm starting to see the cracks. Your mom, Aunt Linda, used to brag about her constantly, but now she's starting to talk about you. I froze. Why? Because you made it, Lydia said. And Madison didn't. Madison and Nathan had been married for less than 3 years, but their life wasn't what she had imagined. Nathan used to be an ambitious young man, but after marrying Madison, he got stuck in a dull job at a finance company. Madison, on the other hand, spent recklessly, buying luxury items, traveling, and posting pictures online to maintain her perfect image. But behind those polished photos, reality wasn't so glamorous. Nathan is miserable, Lydia continued. He can't stand Madison anymore. They fight all the time. Madison refuses to give up her lavish lifestyle, but Nathan is getting exhausted trying to keep up with it. I leaned back in my chair, processing what Lydia had just told me. I used to think that leaving was the only way for me to find peace, but now it seemed like Madison was falling into the very trap she had created. I didn't say anything, but Lydia kept going. They're on the verge of splitting up, Lucy, and I don't think Madison knows how to handle it. I glanced at the photo on my computer screen, a picture of a little girl standing under a streetlight, her eyes filled with hope. Once, I had also waited for something from my family, a sign of recognition, a little love. But now, I didn't need it anymore. All of this, I said slowly, has nothing to do with me anymore. Lydia sighed. I know, but I still thought you should know. I ended the call and leaned back in my chair. No matter how much I tried to leave the past behind, it always found a way to return. Things didn't end there. A few weeks later, Lydia called me again, this time with different news. Lucy. It's about Uncle Robert. I froze. My father. The man who had always been indifferent to me, who had never truly seen me no matter how hard I tried. He didn't make it, Lydia said, her voice as light as a breeze. A strange feeling washed over me, not sadness, not regret. Just emptiness. Are you going to the funeral? Lydia asked. I didn't answer right away. I knew that if I went back, I would have to face Madison, my mother, and the family that had cast me aside. But did I really need to return? That evening, I told Daniel about Lydia's call. He sat on the couch, his eyes filled with concern as he looked at me. What do you think? He asked. I gazed out the window, the city lights shimmering like distant stars. I don't know, I admitted. I don't feel anything for them anymore. But maybe I need to go, to close this chapter. Daniel nodded. If you want to go, I'll go with you. For the first time in years, I returned to my old home. I walked into the funeral in a simple black dress, feeling like an outsider at an event I didn't belong to. My mother sat in the front row, her eyes red, but when she saw me, her expression quickly changed. Not relief, but hesitation. And then I saw Madison. She still looked as beautiful as ever, but something was different. She no longer radiated like the sun. Instead, it seemed like she was desperately clinging to something slipping away. I didn't think you'd come, Madison said, her voice sharp. I smirked. Well, surprise. Then I heard a familiar voice behind me. Lucy? Nathan. He looked older, his eyes weary, the confidence he once had now faded. When he saw Daniel step beside me, I saw the confusion flash across his face. How have you been? Nathan asked, his voice awkward. I simply shrugged. Good, and you? He gave a sad chuckle. I guess you've heard. It's not what I expected. I said nothing, just looked at Nathan, Madison, my mother, all the people who once made me feel invisible. But now, I was no longer that version of Lucy. I turned to my mother. You always said Madison deserved everything. So? Do you have what you wanted now? She didn't answer. I glanced at Madison one last time, then took Daniel's hand. Let's go. This time, as I walked out the door, I felt no heaviness. I had closed that chapter once and for all. I never expected a call from my mother, but then one evening, as I was editing the final photos for my exhibition, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. An unknown number. Instinct told me not to answer, but then I pressed accept. Lucy. My mother's voice came through, softer than I remembered, as if she had lost the certainty she once carried. I didn't respond right away. How many years had it been since we truly spoke? She cleared her throat, as if struggling to find the right words. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I need to say it. I gripped the phone tighter. You have 1 minute, I said, my voice calm but cold. My mother sighed. Madison isn't doing well. I let out a quiet laugh, not from amusement but from the irony of it all. She had spent her entire life caring only about Madison, and now that my sister was struggling, she suddenly remembered I existed? Let me guess, I said, my eyes still fixed on the image on my screen. Nathan is fed up with the marriage, Madison has been spending too much, and now they're in financial trouble? My mother stayed silent, and I knew I was right. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. Nathan is thinking about leaving. He says he can't take it anymore, and Madison? She won't accept it. She still thinks everything will be fine, but it's clearly not. I crossed my arms. And what do you want me to do about it? My mother blinked, as if she couldn't believe my reaction. I just thought you would care. After all, she's still your sister. Sister? I scoffed. You say that as if Madison ever considered me a part of her life. She said nothing. I could imagine her gripping the phone, trying to convince me, as if this were some heartwarming family drama where I would suddenly soften and come running back. But that wasn't reality. Why did you really call me? I asked, my voice calmer than I expected. Because I realize I was wrong, she admitted. I know I treated you unfairly. I know I favored Madison too much. But you have to understand. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted what was best for both of you. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. No, you didn't want what was best for both of us. You wanted what was best for Madison, and you pretended I didn't exist. She didn't argue. I took a deep breath. You called me because Madison is struggling, not because you actually want to fix anything between us. You just don't have anyone else left to turn to. My mother took a shaky breath. Lucy? Please. I closed my eyes, keeping my emotions steady. I've already forgiven myself, I said, but I don't owe you anything. And I hung up. I didn't think much about that call afterward. I no longer felt anger or bitterness. I just felt relief. I spent the next month focusing on the most important project of my career, Unseen, my first photography book. The images in the book weren't just pictures of places or people. They were pieces of a story. The forgotten corners of the city, the people no one noticed, the hidden smiles, the unspoken sadness. They weren't just photographs. They were me. The book launch took place in a small but intimate gallery. The photos hung on the walls, illuminated by soft lighting. Daniel stood beside me, his hand firmly holding mine, a quiet reminder that I was no longer alone. As I stepped forward to speak, I felt something shift inside me. My whole life, I thought I was invisible, I said, my voice carrying through the quiet room. I thought I had to prove my worth to people who never truly cared. But I was wrong. I looked around the room, my gaze landing on Lydia, on Daniel, on the people who had supported me through this journey. I don't need their validation to be myself. And if anyone here has ever felt like they don't exist, remember, you are always worthy. Sometimes you just have to find your own light. Applause filled the room, but more important than the sound was the feeling in my heart. I had finally stepped out of Madison's shadow. No longer the forgotten little sister, no longer the girl struggling to be seen. I was simply me, and for the first time, that was enough. One late afternoon, as I was organizing photos for my next exhibition, I received a letter. A simple envelope, nothing remarkable, just my name, written in slanted handwriting I hadn't seen in years. I knew immediately that it was from my mother. I held the letter in my hands, feeling the rough texture of the paper beneath my fingers. A part of me wanted to rip it apart instantly, but another part hesitated. I was no longer the little girl who craved her approval. Quietly, I opened the envelope, my eyes scanning the words. Lucy, I know you may not want to read this, but I still want to say it whether you listen or not. I was wrong. I didn't see you. I let you become lost within our family. I thought Madison needed me more, but I never realized that you needed someone to stand beside you, too. It wasn't until you left that I understood. I lost you in a way I may never be able to fix. If you can find it in your heart to forgive me, I hope one day we can talk again. I placed the letter down on the table. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anger. I just felt free. How many years had I waited for this? An apology? A recognition that I wasn't invisible in my own family? But now, after finally receiving it, I realized I didn't need it anymore. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to what once was. Forgiveness doesn't mean opening the door to the past and allowing myself to be hurt again. Sometimes, forgiveness is simply letting go. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not because I intended to respond, but because I wanted to keep it as a reminder, a testament that I had overcome everything without needing their validation. That evening, I went to my gallery, where my latest photographs were on display. Soft lighting illuminated each frame, cityscapes at dawn, unseen moments I had captured through my lens. Daniel stood beside me, his hand gently holding mine. Lydia was chatting with a group of guests, her face glowing with happiness. I walked toward a photograph displayed at the center. It was a black-and-white portrait of myself, taken from behind. A girl standing between two towering buildings, the light glimmering ahead while shadows still lingered behind her. A Lucy who was once forgotten, who once sought acceptance. and a Lucy who now stood free from the past. I smiled. I was whole, strong, and no longer anyone's shadow. That light ahead, it was mine. Lucy's story isn't just about betrayal or pain. It's about finding oneself. In life, we sometimes get lost in the shadows of others, overlooked, unseen. But a person's worth isn't defined by family or society's recognition. It's in their ability to rise and create their own light. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it simply means letting go and moving forward. And the most important truth of all, we are always enough, always worthy, whether others acknowledge it or not. What do you think about Lucy's journey? Do you relate to her story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family, life, and the journey to self-worth.